one of the rising stars in, I think I've got two of the best sports writers in the state coming on here. First, it's Gene Henley. He's on the line right now. He's the new Vols beat writer, but we know we used to talk to him a lot at the Chattanooga Times Free Press, excuse me. By the way, I'm Marky Bilson. I had all in a million places. But I got Gene Henley right now, who's just been promoted at Chattanooga to become the Vols beat writer for the Times Free Press, but still, with his old ties with the Mocs, he was all over Rusty Wright being the new Chattanooga head coach. Used to be an assistant at Chattanooga. He has more recently been an assistant at Georgia State, but he's coming back to Chattanooga. And that was basically, I guess, this was the last story that you were going to be filing for the Times Free Press on Chattanooga. Now you're going to be looking at, talking about the Vols as they, compete for a national championship this year. I know you were in Memphis for that basketball game. But congratulations on the promotion, Gene. But let's wrap up before we move to the Vols. Rusty Wright. Oh, boy. I know that he was, a very successful assistant back when the Mocs were going to the playoffs every year and winning the Southern Conference. But more recently, the success hasn't quite been there with Georgia State. Tell us how Rusty Wright became the head coach, replacing Tom Arth at Chattanooga.
First off, thanks for having me. And it's just, I believe what happened kind of was that there was from the second that Tom announced that he was leaving, there was just a groundswell of support for Rusty. Rusty did interview for the job in 2016, but that was also a previous administration in terms of the athletic director and people that were making that hire. And obviously the two most recent athletic directors of UTC kind of have completely different visions. And I think David Blackburn was more trying to fast track his way in and out, knowing that young hires will kind of help that process with him. Whereas I think Mark Wharton, likes a certain level of stability in terms of his hires. And so I think during this process, they realized that, Rusty is, was well liked, he's well appreciated, he's loved amongst the fan base. I mean, he's loved in Chattanooga. His daughter played basketball at Boise Canyon, I believe, and now she plays at Belmont. And so, I think from that aspect, he's a guy who relates with his players, he pushes them. He's going to demand the best out of them, and the fact that he recruited he had a hand in recruiting at least half the guys on the roster, I believe, something to that effect, means that he has some prior knowledge of these guys, and it'll be a lot more seamless of a transition going back to what they may have been pre-Tom with Rusty taking over.
Well, were you surprised it occurred so fast? Did Chattanooga ever look or consider really anybody else but Rusty Wright?
Yeah, there were tons of interviews. They interviewed Jimmy Chadwell from, obviously, former ETSU quarterback. They interviewed, there were conversations with, I think, a few people. But, you kind of have to move fast because, in this day and age, with the December signing period, if you see guys that have committed to your program and they don't necessarily know, who the head coach is going to be. It's different than the whole Tennessee situation where the offensive coordinator is not always directly involved in recruiting processes. Your head coach always is directly involved in recruiting process. And so, those guys kind of need to know who their head coach would be if they choose to sign, and kind of, they need to kind of take a step forward in terms of recruiting going forward. Because I believe they were the only Division I team in the country without a head coach after Tom left. And so you can't let that thing draw out. And I think with the knowledge that Rusty is a good hire, but also a stable hire, it kind of made the decision. If there wasn't a Rusty, I don't think that they would have rushed it if that guy wasn't available. But the fact of the matter is he was, and which is why they were able to move fast with it and move on.
Okay, intriguing. Gene Henley, some spot-on reporting here, and now you're with the Vols. You mentioned that, the offensive coordinator won't be involved in all the recruiting, obviously. Defensive players, but the head coach will. Still, I got to tell you something. I really think that Jeremy Pruitt's line about the offensive coordinator can be overrated was just sort of trying to save face. I do realize that they brought in, of the 17 guys that signed yesterday, 9 of them were on offense, but 6 of them were offensive linemen. And, I mean, Will Friend right now is the leading offensive assistant right there. Thoughts here. I know they've got a chance at this running back Gray out of Memphis. In fact, it looks like as he makes his decision about a half hour, the Vols might be the leading suitor. But just thoughts on offensive coordinator is overrated. It sounds to me so much like a football coach trying to save face.
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily what he said. What he said was that they can be overrated because, obviously, if you have what he was saying was if you have talent in your program, it doesn't always matter who your offensive coordinator is. I think that, that it wouldn't necessarily matter who Alabama's offensive coordinator was this year. With Tua, with those guys, all the people that they had in place there, that offense was going to be successful regardless of who the OC was. And I think that his larger point there was, that's the position that can be overrated in terms of how important they are. If you have, I guess the whole quote-unquote, if you have Jimmys and Joes guys, they're more important than the schemes and things of that nature. And that was more of where he was headed with that. But with that being said, I do believe that there may have, they have been close. They were close on a guy. Like, I think that there's so much reporting in Knoxville in terms of this, that, and the other that nobody necessarily knows the truth. And just because he goes and has a conversation with somebody doesn't mean he necessarily interviewed them for the job. It may have been some cases simply nothing more than a conversation to get a feel for that person and kind of see how they like going about things. I don't think that the U3 stuff was as close as what people believe. Obviously, what happens in Knoxville, and I've learned this really quickly, is fans will take a morsel of information and blow it up to be 15 times larger than what it actually is.
You are right about that. Okay, Gene, I only have 30 seconds here, so let me ask, when do you think an offensive coordinator is going to get hired?
I think it's weird to say it, but I'd almost say if it doesn't happen this weekend, then I think it's going to happen immediately after bowl season.
Intriguing.
I think, I've heard rumors of this, that, and the other about when and where and who and all that, but
I got 5 seconds.
If he doesn't have a guy in place this week, it'll happen after the bowl season.
Gene Henley on top of it all. Joe Rexrode is next.